Everyone learns tarot the same way, and almost everyone is told to learn it wrong. Open any beginner guide, watch any starter video, and you get the same instruction. Start with the major arcana, learn cards 0 through 21 in order as a story. The Fool sets out, meets the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, and slowly climbs toward the World card, transformed. It's called The Fool's Journey, and it's a genuinely satisfying way to memorize 22 cards because a story sticks in your head better than a list. You watch a character grow, you feel the arc, and suddenly the Tower doesn't feel like a scary card about disaster. It feels like a chapter in a hero's development. That structure is why so many decks are marketed around it, and why so many readers can rattle off the major arcana in sequence, but still freeze up the moment you flip over the Nine of Pentacles. Here's the detail that complicates the whole approach. The Fool's Journey isn't ancient. It's not carved into some 15th century Italian card deck waiting to be discovered. It's a modern interpretive layer. The term Fool's Journey was popularized decades later by tarot author Eden Gray, building on major arcana imagery such as Pamela Coleman Smith's illustrations for A.E. Waite. And if you actually compare tarot decks across history, the order isn't even consistent. In the older Tarot de Marseille, Strength is card 11 and Justice is card 8. In the Rider-Waite deck, they're swapped. Same cards, same meanings, different numbers. That's not a printing error. That swap exists because of astrology. Specifically because certain occult societies wanted the numbering of the major arcana to line up cleanly with the zodiac and the planets, and Strength needed to sit at Leo's position while Justice needed to sit at Libra's. The story you're told to memorize was rearranged to fit a structure most beginners never even see. So the real question isn't what order are the cards numbered in, it's what structure is actually underneath tarot, and whether learning by story is the same thing as learning by structure. To answer that, you have to look at what tarot is actually built from, and this is where it starts looking a lot more like a chart than a storybook. The deck splits into major arcana and minor arcana. The minor arcana is 56 cards divided into 4 suits, and each suit corresponds to one of the 4 classical elements. Wands are fire, cups are water, swords are air, pentacles are earth. If you've spent any time with a birth chart, you already know these 4 elements aren't decoration. They're the basic vocabulary astrology runs on. Fire signs act first and think later. Water signs feel their way through a room before they speak. Air signs need to talk it out. Earth signs want to know it works before they trust it. The suits of tarot are doing the exact same job the elements do in a chart. They're not 56 unrelated pictures. They're 4 emotional operating systems, each one expressed across 14 cards. Once you sit with that, the standard memorize 78 cards through repetition advice starts to look like the tarot equivalent of trying to learn a language by memorizing sentences instead of grammar. You can recite the 9 of Cups means satisfaction the same way you can recite Je m'appelle Erica without understanding a single rule of French. It works until someone asks you something you haven't memorized, and then you're stuck. What you actually want is the underlying logic, so that when you see a new combination, you can work it out instead of guessing. That's where the numbered minor arcana cards reveal something even more specific. In several esoteric systems, particularly the ones descending from the Golden Dawn, the numbered cards 2 through 10 in each suit are assigned to what astrologers call decans. A decan is just 10 degrees of a zodiac sign, and if you divide the full 360-degree zodiac wheel into 10-degree slices, you get 36 decans total. Each decan gets a ruling planet, following an old sequence called the Chaldean order, which is the same planetary weighting system astrologers have used for centuries when they think about planetary hours and rulerships. Line those 36 decans up against the 36 numbered minor arcana cards, and every single one of them becomes a specific planet operating through a specific element in a specific stretch of a specific zodiac sign. The 9 of Swords isn't just anxiety. Structurally, it's Mars in the middle decan of Gemini, which is exactly why that card feels less like calm intellectual worry and more like a mind racing itself into exhaustion at 3 in the morning. The dread has a mechanism, not just a mood. Once you see that, the court cards make a lot more sense too, and this is usually where beginners get stuck the hardest, because pages, knights, queens, and kings don't behave like clean personality types the way the numbered cards do. That's because court cards are combinations, the same way a stellium is a combination. A Knight of Wands isn't simply fire energy, it's fire expressed through an active, restless, action-oriented court position, which is why that card feels like someone who starts the road trip before they've packed the car. You're not memorizing 16 isolated characters, you're learning how element and role combine, the same way you learn how a planet changes flavor depending on which sign it's sitting in. So here's the actual claim I'm making, and I know it goes against basically every beginner tarot guide on the internet. Learning tarot, major arcana first, story first, is backwards. If your goal is real fluency instead of surface memorization, the better order runs low to high. Start with the four elements and get fluent in what fire, water, air, and earth actually feel like emotionally, the same groundwork you'd want before reading a birth chart. Then learn the court cards as combinations of those elements with role and temperament. Then learn the numbered cards through the decan structure, connecting each one to a planet and a slice of the zodiac, so the meanings stop feeling arbitrary and start feeling causal. Only after all of that do you bring in the major arcana, because the major arcana is the capstone, not the entryway. Each major arcana card corresponds to either a planet or a zodiac sign in the same esoteric framework. The Tower to Mars, the Star to Aquarius, the Moon to Pisces, and those correspondences only click into place once you already understand what those planets and signs are doing in the minor arcana underneath them. Learning the majors first is a little like reading the summary chapter of a textbook before you've read the textbook. It feels great. You feel like you understand the whole system, and then someone hands you a real spread and you realize you learned the poster, not the engine. Now, the obvious pushback, and it's a fair one. Teachers put the major arcana first because it's genuinely easier to memorize 22 archetypal images with a story attached than 56 numbered cards with no obvious narrative. That's true, and I'm not saying the Fool's Journey is worthless as a mnemonic device, a way to hold the big picture in your head. It's honestly pretty elegant. My argument isn't that the story is bad, it's that a story is not the same thing as a structure, and if you only ever learn the story, you end up with a beautiful outline and no rooms inside the house. You can absolutely learn the Fool's Journey for orientation early on, just don't mistake that orientation for fluency. The same way knowing the 12 houses in order doesn't mean you actually know how to read a chart. There's also a deeper split hiding underneath this whole debate, and it's worth naming directly because it explains why tarot teachers disagree so confidently with each other. There are really two philosophies of tarot running side by side. One is the humanistic self-help lineage that grew out of the Rider-Waite deck's popularity, where cards are treated as psychological mirrors and intuition does most of the interpretive work. The other is the older esoteric lineage, the one running through the Golden Dawn, through Paul Foster Case's Builders of the Adytum, through Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck, where every card is deliberately built on planetary and zodiacal correspondence, and intuition is supposed to operate on top of that structure, not instead of it. If you only ever learn tarot the first way, elemental and planetary order will feel unnecessary, even over-engineered, and that's a completely legitimate way to read cards. But if you want your interpretations to hold together the way a competent chart reading holds together, where one placement logically explains another, instead of every card meaning being memorized in isolation, the second lineage is doing something the story-first method simply doesn't offer. None of this means there's one universally correct starting point for every single person, and I want to be honest about that instead of pretending I've found the secret order nobody else noticed. If your own chart runs heavy in fire and air, you might genuinely absorb wands and swords faster and want to start there before circling back to cups and pentacles. And that's a legitimate personal entry point rather than a mistake. What I'm saying is that wherever you begin, the direction matters more than the starting card. Build from elements outward. Let the major arcana be the place all that structure finally gets named, not the place you start guessing from. So if you've tried tarot before and felt like you memorized a deck of pretty pictures without ever understanding why they meant what they meant, that's probably not a you problem. That's a sequencing problem, baked into almost every beginner resource that hands you the Fool's Journey on day one and the elemental logic never at all. Try flipping the order once, elements first, courts second, decans third, majors last, and see if the cards suddenly start explaining themselves instead of needing to be recited from memory. Where did you actually start, and did it stick? Tell me in the comments, and if you want more of these investigations into the structures hiding underneath the systems everyone else takes for granted, subscribe.